Record of Public Women, February 1865. In the year of 1865, Maximilian of Habsburg, the monarch of the Second Mexican Empire, ordered the creation of a public record of harlotry practitioners in the country capital in order to control prostitution. It gives testimony to the precarious conditions these women faced. Most of them had worked as seamstresses, laundrywomen, household employees, and tortilla makers. Prostitution was thought of as a necessary evil, therefore, the regulation was a satisfactory solution and a means of control. The hygienic need to tolerate prostitution was accepted. It had to be isolated, restricted, hidden, closely watched, and shut down. Prince Felix Sousamsom. During the French intervention, 1862 to 67, so-called soldiers of fortune took part. One of those was a Prussian officer named Prince Felix Sousamsom. In 1861, he came to the U.S. and he fought for the Union. There, he met an American woman, Agnes Leclerc Joy, daughter of an American general, who became his wife. As the American Civil War ended, he, his wife, and their dog, a terrier named Jimmy, went to Mexico to join the Imperial Army to fight for Maximilian. Felix had great people skills and became an important confidant to the emperor. In fact, once Maximilian was arrested and scheduled for execution, he and his wife tried repeatedly to plead for mercy, but it was to no avail. Afterwards, he returned to Europe, rejoined the Prussian army, and was killed in action in 1870 in the Franco-Prussian War. The Zouaves. Numerous entities were involved in the French intervention. Most were French allies: France, Spain, United Kingdom, Belgium, Austria-Hungary, French Foreign Legion, and the Khedivite of Egypt. Perhaps the most colorful in terms of their uniforms were the North African Zouaves that fought for the French. Their troops wore a red fez, blue sash, braided blue jackets, and voluminous red trousers. The uniform was a source of great pride and camaraderie. They also managed to make their way onto the packaging of zigzag rolling papers. Dance of the 41, November 1901. The Dance of the 41 was a society scandal in early 20th century Mexico during the presidency of Porfirio Diaz. The incident revolved around an illegal police raid carried out on 17 November 1901 against a private home in Mexico City, the site of a dance attended by a group of men, of whom 19 were dressed in women's clothing. The press was keen to report the incident, in spite of the government's effort to hush it up, since the participants belonged to the upper echelons of society. Only 41 men were officially arrested, however. There were rumors that Ignacio de la Torre y Mier, son-in-law of Porfirio Diaz, was also in attendance. Of the 41 men arrested for offense to morals and good manners, most paid for their freedom, and only 12 were eventually sent to work in the Yucatan. The scandal was called, by prominent writer Carlos Monsiváis, the invention of homosexuality in Mexico, due to its being the first time homosexuality was openly spoken about in the Mexican media. Punjabi Mexican marriages. When the U.S. government tightened its immigration rules in the early 1900s, Punjabi immigrant workers, mostly men, were unable to bring their wives and families with them. Marriages between whites and people of color had previously been prohibited by anti-miscegenation laws in many states, but Mexican women matched Punjabi men perfectly. They had black hair, dark eyes, and had the same skin tone. As county clerks perceived similarities in complexion as indicators of belonging to the same race, it allowed Punjabi men to circumvent anti-miscegenation laws and begin their family life in America. Though the California Alien Land Law of 1913 forbade non-citizens from owning or leasing land, some of the Punjabi men found ways to work around the system and gained control of cotton fields. They began to employ Mexicans who fled to the U.S. after being displaced by the Mexican Revolution. Marrying Punjabi men was therefore seen as one of the ways for Mexican women to climb up the social ladder, since a majority of them worked on Punjabi men's farms. Marijuana and the Mexican Revolution. In Mexico, especially the poor campesinos utilized cannabis as a social lubricant and an antidote to drudgery and fatigue. There was a common saying among lower-class Mexicans, "Esta ya le dio las tres," you take it 3 times, which referred to the exhilarating bounce from 3 puffs of marijuana. The military was one segment of the Mexican population that readily accepted marijuana. Conscripts enjoyed smoking the weed, which in most cases was cheaper than alcohol and easier to obtain. During the Mexican Revolution, 1910 to 1920, the first great social revolution of the 20th century, Pancho Villa's guerrilla army, composed largely of peons and Indians, smoked marijuana during long marches and afterward to celebrate a successful campaign. Their stoned exploits were immortalized in the well-known folk song La Cucaracha, with the chorus about a hapless foot soldier, the cockroach, who can't function unless he's high on marijuana. La cucaracha, ya no puede caminar, porque no tiene marihuana que fumar. The cockroach is unable to walk because he doesn't have any marijuana to smoke. Nellie Bly in 6 Months in Mexico. 6 Months in Mexico is a book by Nellie Bly, an American, that she wrote after her travels through Mexico in about 1885. In the book, she describes the lives and customs of the people of Mexico and the poverty of the common people. She also described courtship, wedding ceremonies, the popularity of tobacco smoking, the legend of the maguey plant from which pulque and mezcal were made, and the habits of soldiers, including an early mention of their marijuana use. She covered Mexico's corruption under dictator Porfirio Diaz. On this assignment, she sent back regular reports to her editor, but Mexican officials did not receive her scathing reports well, and they expelled her from the country. She was struck by the widespread addiction to playing the lottery, noting that people would even pawn their clothes in order to buy tickets. The Confederate exodus to Mexico. After the American Civil War ended in 1865, many Confederates left the United States for other countries. Several thousand went to Mexico to establish colonies there. The New Virginia colony was a colonization plan in central Mexico to resettle ex-Confederates after the American Civil War. The largest settlement was Carlota, named after Empress Carlota, Maximilian's wife. The venture was conceived by Commodore Matthew Fontaine Maury. Maximilian liked Maury and encouraged his idea of inviting Confederates to resettle in Mexico. When the French withdrew from Carlota in March 1867, the area was overrun by forces of Juarez, and the remaining New Virginia colonists fled the area. The New Virginia settlements were abandoned as the anti-Maximilian forces reached them. Their survivors generally moved toward the coast. The imperial government collapsed in May 1867, and most of the settlers left Mexico. So, as you can see from this image, there were 13 colonies pretty well spread all over Mexico.